Good afternoon, Jimmy Kim here, and you are listening to the greatest show on the planet, The Jimmy Kim Show. Today, I'll be interviewing Terry Adams. He's an attorney and also the former judge on the Texas First Court of Appeals. All right, Terry, go ahead and take the mic and tell us about yourself and give the audience some background about what you've done.
Jimmy, thank you very much for inviting me to come out today and to be with your listeners on this radio show. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, my name's Terry Adams, former justice on the First Court of Appeals. Was appointed to that position last year by Governor Abbott. It was a pleasure serving on that court. In terms of my background and who I am, we moved to Texas, my family, my parents did, right out of college when I was, my dad got transferred, worked with Gulf Oil. We lived up in Pittsburgh, so 1982. He got transferred down here. I volunteered to help them move, and I never left.
Nice. I don't blame you. I love Texas.
It's the greatest.
And I know you do too.
It's the greatest state. Houston is the greatest city. The funny thing was that my wife's parents, her dad worked with Marathon Oil.
Oh,
and so they got transferred from Ohio down to Houston. Well, Baton Rouge and then Houston, and moved down the street from my parents. And so that's how I met my wife. Our parents were neighbors. My mom was determined to fix me up with someone. And so my wife was an engineering student at Duke University, and her mom was like, oh, a lawyer and an engineer. You guys got to meet. And so we met, got engaged to get married, and we've been married for 37 years.
Very nice. So. Yeah. Well, that's a good combination. Yeah, of intellect.
Yeah.
Lawyer and engineer.
Well,
solve any problems or issues that come up.
She has all the intellect. She has all the intellect.
Are you sure?
It's a good balance. It's a good balance.
Well, I know your family's listening, so yeah, good line, good move there.
Yeah. But we have 3 kids, all born in Houston. A son who lives in El Paso with his family, and 2 kids. Then we have 2 daughters that live here in Houston. Our oldest daughter, her husband is a chef at Tony's Restaurant. A plug for Tony's. And then our youngest daughter is here and she has a boyfriend. And so we have 3 adult kids and 3 grandkids, and a 4th grandchild on the way.
Wow, Terry, you look so young. You're a grandfather?
They're very young grandchildren.
Okay. Figures.
Yeah, they're very young grandchildren.
Because it's weird for me to call you a grandfather because you're very young.
Well, we got married early.
I
was 23. I think Ann was 21. She was still in college when I asked her to get married.
Right.
And so we were blessed to have kids early. And so now we're blessed to be young-looking grandparents.
Very nice, yeah. When you'll be around a long time for,
to enjoy them in other generations. So there you go.
Yeah, surely. So. Yeah, I've never thought that it was necessary to put a timeline on making a commitment like that in terms of marriage.
Right.
Whether if you're younger or if you're older, just whatever works out, I think is the best way to do that. And obviously that happened for you, and it worked out very well.
It worked out great. I think I think I freaked her parents out and my parents out because I only knew her. Ann's going to kill me if I tell this story, but I only knew her for 6 months. And so as soon as I met her, I knew she was the one. And
you felt it in your heart.
I felt it in my heart. And so I knew that she was the one. And so why wait? I mean, everyone waits a year or whatever they do before they, ask someone to get married. I just knew. Right. And so when she came home for Christmas break, her senior year of college, so when I asked her to get married, I'm sure her parents were thinking, oh my gosh.
Crazy.
Right. And as a parent now, that I can relate to that. But it worked. I just knew.
Well, sometimes that gut instinct is right. And for this instance, it was. And you took action. That's probably the most important thing. And it worked out.
Right. And I always tell our kids, always follow the voice inside you.
Right.
And I tell them, the voice inside you is not your conscience or something else. That's, in my opinion, that's God talking to you. So when you hear that voice, you got to listen to it, even if it seems crazy to you. Listen to it and follow it and trust it, and it'll take you to the right place. And so that's kind of what this story is all about, is listening to the voice inside you.
That's phenomenal. Because, the times I've always gotten into trouble, Terry, it's when I didn't listen to that voice inside.
Right. That's exactly.
And I end up paying for it.
Right. Everyone, and I'm the same way. The times I didn't listen to it, it's like, oh man,
It's like, darn,
I should have listened to that.
should have listened to that. Yeah.
so
Should have
this-
listened to my gut.
So this is one of the times when I listen to it, and that's what happens. Good things happen.
Right. Well, at the same time, nobody's perfect. So, yeah, learn from our mistakes, right? And just
Right.
keep moving forward and get better. But
Ex-
don't make the same mistake over and over, right, Terry?
You're not supposed to make the same mistake twice.
Right, yeah,
Right.
I agree. Well, good lessons for the listeners and viewers out
Right.
there. That's a lot of wisdom in these short
So-
little spurts, right?
So, yeah.
All right, Terry, next we'll go to, can you give us some more information on your legal specialization as a lawyer?
Sure.
So your field of expertise.
Sure.
Because I don't think a lot of people know that about you. Yeah.
Absolutely. I went to South Texas College of Law for law school. When I went to law school, I think like most folks who go to law school, they want to make a difference in the cases that they work on. South Texas is a great law school, focuses on litigation. The litigation that I wanted to work on was more in terms of driving the direction of a case. And so you have litigation in the trial court and you have litigation in the appellate courts, which is, what does that mean? After a case leaves the trial court, a jury renders a verdict, the judge enters a judgment, then the party that didn't prevail takes it up on appeal. And at that point, the knowledge of the law or the appellate lawyer who has that knowledge of the law then can turn a loss in the trial court into a win or keep a win. But that requires, well, it gives you the ability to direct the case. And that's what I was interested in. So South Texas College of Law, when I went, the two courts of appeals in Texas, for this area in Harris County and the 9 surrounding counties, were located on the top floor of South Texas College of Law. The first Court of Appeals where I previously worked, and also the 14th Court of Appeals. So during law school, I was able to intern at the 14th Court of Appeals to see if I liked this whole appellate thing.
Right.
I just fell in love with it. The judges, there's 9 judges on the 14th Court of Appeals, still are. I got to work with the Chief Justice then.
Oh, very nice. Wait, that was while you were in
law school as an intern. So I was
Wow.
as
Yeah,
an intern.
what an experience.
Oh, it was wonderful.
That's incredible.
And fell in love with the whole aspect of appellate law. So that's what I thought I would specialize in and have specialized in. After law school, then I applied what's called a briefing attorney position. You may hear it in terms of the U.S. Supreme Court as a law clerk. And they're young lawyers who apply out of law school once they graduate to work with the judges on the Supreme Court. So I applied for that. There were several hundred that apply annually for a briefing attorney position on the Texas Supreme Court. They pick 18.
That's the Texas Supreme Court, is that correct?
The
Okay.
Texas Supreme Court in
Okay.
Austin.
It's the highest court in the state, right?
That is the highest court in the state. They get to pick and choose the cases they want to hear, but that's the top court in the state.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to be chosen
Very nice.
to work on that out of law school. And that just further cemented my love of appellate law.
Right.
To see how the court, how it's supposed to act in terms of interpreting and applying the law to the facts of cases. And is a law that we're all supposed to follow. So I
Right.
fell in love with that. So after leaving the briefing attorney position in Austin, then I came back to Houston, got a job at a small litigation firm, and told them I want to do appellate law. That was back in 1988. At that point, appellate law as a specialty was at its very beginning.
Oh, really?
There were some who had done it before, but in general, law firms didn't have, at that point, established sections of appellate lawyers.
And that's all across the country, correct?
Well, in Houston, and I think Houston,
right.
I mean, back then, Houston was sort of, I think in my opinion, were all the best litigators. Trial court litigators were in Houston.
Oh, really?
No disrespect to folks from Dallas or anywhere else, but Houston had some phenomenal litigators back in the 80s.
Right.
And historically, litigators, after they tried a case, they would then do the appeal themselves. And so the notion of someone else coming in and then handling your appeal after you tried the case was like, what are you talking about?
It's appalling. It could be.
Right. And so it gradually shifted to where that's the case now because it is a separate specialty. So I was fortunate enough to start at the time when this really took off.
Oh, okay.
And that's how I've spent the last 32 years of my law practice, is handling the cases up on appeal. Ultimately worked for a large litigation firm here in Houston, in which I was the head of the appellate practice group there, handled litigation all over the state and also other states as well,
Okay.
managing our appellate group.
Okay. Now, is your law firm still operating?
Now I have my own private practice, so
Right.
when I was appointed by Governor Abbott to the First Court of Appeals,
Right.
then I left the law firm and opened up my own law firm before I got appointed. And so now I'm back with my own law firm.
Okay. So it is operating.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm
Okay.
still actively working, handling cases. One right now in the Texas Supreme Court, so we're actively working.
Very nice. Yeah. So you're
Yeah.
juggling many different hats right now.
Yes, yes, but that's good.
Because I didn't even know you were operating the law firm.
Yeah. So actively practicing law, campaigning, which we talk about later. Just many hats, and that's good. It keeps you young. I love it.
That's your secret.
Working hard is the key.
Right.
Working hard and being engaged in things that you enjoy, and you do them because you like them or love them. It just keeps you young at heart.
Right. Now, has the appellate law area of expertise, has it become a lot bigger, like nationally across the country?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it a area where law firms do specialize in? And
Yep.
is it very prevalent now? 'Cause
Absolutely.
You said that when you started, it was relatively new.
It wasn't so much. Yeah, when I first started, and I told the managing partner of the first firm, this is what I want to do. They hire someone off the Supreme Court, a clerk.
Right.
What do you want to do now? I want to handle appeals. And it's like, you mean you want to sit at the end of the hallway and just write briefs? I don't quite understand that.
They looked at you like you were crazy.
Like I was crazy. And I think a lot of appellate lawyers now who are my age have went through the same experience.
Okay.
So it's a common for folks my generation out of law school.
Right. To have experienced that.
Went through the same thing.
Right.
Now, every law firm that handles litigation pretty much has a dedicated appellate practice group that just handles appeals for that law firm, and that allows the trial court litigators then, once they try a case, they can be involved in the appeal, and it's important to be involved in the appeal, but they can go back and try another case,
Right.
as opposed to getting involved in the appeal, which is really a different animal.
Oh, okay.
So most law firms, I hate to say every because that's an absolute, but almost every law firm, large and small, has either a group of folks that just handle appeals or one lawyer that handles the appeals for their firm and handles them from other law firms as well.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah. You know how they say you learn something every day, Terry?
Yep, yep.
I just learned something really cool about appellate law.
It's the evolution of a practice area.
Right.
And there's so many, and really for Houston, it's really a function of the fact that there are so many great litigators here in Houston, and there was so much litigation going on that really good litigators recognized the need to have appellate lawyers in their firm so they could go back out and do what they love,
Right.
which is arguing cases to a jury and winning.
Right. Yeah, they can focus on their niche while the appellate lawyers focus on their niche, right?
Exactly.
So it's separating that responsibility. So if you try to do everything, it's a lot.
It's hard. I mean, one of the pioneers of this was a gentleman, he's a legend, Jim Kronzer.
So you in Houston, Texas?
He was here in Houston. He was really the grandfather of, in my opinion, the appellate practice area. And he started and he sort of paved the way for everybody else.
Right.
And so that's what we just try to carry forward, what he did, and continue it on into the future. So that's what I do.
Very interesting, yeah, because I always commonly hear about, personal injury law firms, commercial litigation, real estate, attorneys or tax attorneys, but appellate areas of practice is not something I hear about as much, like out there.
And people say, well, what is that? And really,
Right,
if you're a good appellate attorney, you're really, you talked about different specialties of substantive areas of the law, personal injury, medical malpractice, legal malpractice, commercial.
Right.
A good appellate lawyer has to know all those substantive areas. So you tend to be more of a generalist in terms of as opposed to focusing on one particular niche of substantive area of
Right.
law, you should, if you want to handle lots of appeals,
Right.
be able to handle them on numerous substantive areas, and maybe all at the same time.
Wow.
You may have a case involving voting rights issues. You may have a constitutional appeal, a medical malpractice, commercial litigation, oil and gas appeals simultaneously in different courts at different stages. And so it constantly talk about staying young and learning new things. You're constantly involved in different substantive areas. So I'm constantly reading law.
Right.
When Ann and I first got married, the new cases came out in these soft-bound green little paperback books that came out in the mail. I would take them home from the law firm and put them on my bedside table and read new cases every night until I fell asleep. And so, for 2 hours or so, I'd be reading the law,
Right.
so that I knew what the law was. Appellate lawyers are supposed to be the legal gurus in whatever firm they're at, or the law lawyer. And so, only way you can be the law lawyer is to constantly read the law.
Right. So you have to be very well versed, as you said, in all areas of pretty much expertise,
Right.
because you can't just do one area.
Right.
Because you
Yeah.
have appeals from all different areas
all different substantive areas.
Right.
Tax and bankruptcy were the two substantive areas I didn't get involved in because those
Right.
are so complicated.
So niche.
You really need to focus on those. But absent that, pretty much everything else I've done and continue to do.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. And do you have other lawyers at your law firm? Is it solely you?
It's
yourself?
just me.
Okay.
So I have a solo practice. Once I got on the court and got off the court and now running again, it's the flexibility of having a solo practice is the way to go.
Okay. Yeah, you have the flexibility and freedom to
Right.
operate however you want to.
Because when you campaign,
Right.
it's like a second job. And so you need to be able to have the flexibility on how you're going to do that.
Oh yeah, right. It's a second job that turns into almost a full-time job, right?
Really, it's like anything. I mean, if you want to do it well, you got to throw yourself into it,
Right.
100%. And
Right,
so you got to throw yourself into it. The practice of law and then this other campaigning is two full-time jobs.
Oh right, yeah. I can totally. Now, I haven't ran for office yet, but I'm a political activist and I have been for quite a long time, and yeah, I totally understand the amount of energy and time and dedication something like that would take. So I totally understand where you're coming from on that.
But it's a labor of love. I mean, it's
Right. And you love it, right?
I love
Yeah,
it.
You
I
love
mean-
being active in the community, getting out there and doing engagement.
Yep. I mean, it's just a privilege to do, and you got to have a servant's heart. I love the practice of law. I love appellate work,
Right.
but I love also serving other people and being in the community. And from a law standpoint, it's where the rubber meets the road. Too often, as an appellate lawyer or any other kind of lawyer, you're in an office with your law around you and your cases, and you forget, or it's easy to forget,
Right.
that what you're doing impacts individual people, whether in their businesses or the employees in a business. And so when you get to go out and do what I do now, campaigning and seeing people on the grassroots level, it reemphasizes the importance of the practice of law and our responsibility as lawyers to serve, as lawyers to do our best job. So it's been refreshing. It's been invigorating for me for my law practice too.
Very nice. Yeah, it's a good contrast, would you say?
Well,
Being in the office and then getting out there and
Well, it's really, as opposed to contrast, they fit together, because what you do as a lawyer in your office impacts individual people. And I think I needed to be reminded
right.
of the importance of what I was doing and how it impacted individuals
Right.
in everyday life. And so it's been good for that, and it's made me a better attorney.
Right. Okay. Because you have that deep understanding of how it affects people.
Right, and it's easy. It's easy just to focus on your work and
Right.
to not connect how it impacts people in our community, and it does that, and it's important to remember that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about the people.
Right, it's
Essentially.
it's all about the people. And when Governor Abbott appointed me to the First Court of Appeals, then that message and that lesson got reemphasized, because as a member of the First Court of Appeals, you're a public servant, And
Right.
you are, in fact, working for everybody in the community across 10 counties. And so the notion as a lawyer that you're impacting people gets emphasized as the truth. These are all the people that you're working for.
Right.
Everyone is your boss.
Right. And you represent and worked with 10 counties, is that correct, in that position?
Right, that court
Yeah,
serves.
so tell us more about that position that you previously held,
Sure.
and so our listeners and viewers can kind of have that information.
Sure.
Because a lot of people, they don't understand what that is.
Right, a lot of folks are thinking, well, he's talking about the Court of Appeals. What the heck is that?
Right.
In Texas, we have two high courts, and we mentioned the Texas Supreme Court.
Right.
Texas is unusual or unique. I guess unique is a better word. We have two Supreme Courts, for lack of a better description. We have a Texas Supreme Court that handles all the civil cases at the highest level, and our second Supreme Court, I apologize to the court members, it's not the second, but it's called the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and that's the high court for criminal cases. And so we have two high courts, civil one, criminal court. Below that are 14 courts of appeals that are scattered across Texas based on population. Two of those 14 courts of appeals are located in Houston, the First Court of Appeals and the 14th Court of Appeals.
Okay.
And those two courts of appeals have overlapping or concurrent jurisdiction, which means they handle or they serve the same 10 counties.
Okay.
And so they serve counties from Grimes County to the north, where Navasota is, all the way down to Galveston County, where Galveston is, and pretty much every county in between. What those courts of appeals do is that they review judgments in every civil, criminal, and family law case that comes down in every single trial court
Right.
across that 10-county area. And those courts of appeals, in this instance, the First Court of Appeals then decides if those judgments are correct or not.
Okay.
When we talk to people about the First Court of Appeals, I tell them, and same for the 14th Court, that they're the most important courts in Texas for the people listening to this radio program,
Okay.
which is probably everybody in the 10-county area. And the reason why I say that is because the Supreme Court of Texas has discretionary jurisdiction. It gets to pick and choose the cases it wants to hear. And so, for example, last year, the Texas Supreme Court had 1,000 appeals filed with it. They decided to hear about 9%. So 90 cases is what they heard. Of those 90 cases, about 5% of them came from the First Court of Appeals. So that's between 4 and 5
Right.
of their caseload were cases from the First Court. But a better way to understand it is the First Court of Appeals had 720 civil appeals filed with it last year. So out of those 720 civil appeals filed with the First Court of Appeals, between 4 and 5 were granted and heard by the Supreme Court of Texas, which means the other 716, 99% of the cases that the First Court of Appeals decided in civil matters, it didn't go any further. That was the final word in that case, was the First Court of Appeals.
Right.
And the criminal numbers are pretty much the same. So when I say it's the most important court in Texas for the folks in this 10-county area, because whatever the First Court or the 14th Court says is more than likely going to be the final word in that case.
Right. Because the small percentage of ones that go
Exactly
go
right.
up.
Right. It's probably,
Okay.
and again, I'm not a mathematician. If Ann was here, she could do the math for me.
the engineer wife, right?
Right, engineer wife, right? She could tell the math for me, but it's
Right.
probably about 99%.
Okay, which is very small
right.
compared to
Right, exactly.
Right.
So there's a 1% chance that
Right.
whatever these courts decide will get reviewed and potentially get reversed. So that's why it's really important to know what these courts of appeals do, how they impact your life in civil, criminal, and family law cases, and understand that what they decide is going to be the last word in the case, more than likely.
Okay. Now, so that leads me to my next question. How does the Supreme Court decide which one to take or which one not to take? Does it depend? That's what I'm confused about.
That's a really good question. And they have a broad jurisdictional parameter, which is
Okay.
cases that impact the jurisprudence of the state.
Okay.
And that's kind of amorphous because what you think may impact the jurisprudence of the state may be something different than what I think impacts the jurisprudence of the state.
Right.
Typically, it's something where multiple courts of appeals in Texas among the 14 have looked at it perhaps 2 or 3 have gone one way and 2 or 3 have gone the other way. That's an easy example of a legal issue that would impact the jurisprudence of the state. What you want, the goal of the law is to be consistent and predictable at the end of the day, so that people know what the law is and how to follow it.
Right.
So important to the jurisprudence of the state is to, if there's confusion or uncertainty about an important issue, a legal issue that may or likely will arise in numerous courts of appeals, that would be something that would fit that category. The Texas Supreme Court has 9 justices on it, and so they meet in conference and they decide on a case-by-case basis which cases, about 9%, which of those cases meets that criteria
Okay.
according to that court.
Okay.
And that's how they decide.
Okay. And they try to be as objective as possible based on what you're telling me.
They do, and they have a 2-tiered briefing system, so they have lots of briefing, and they have briefing from other folks that come in as friends of the court. But yeah, that's how they decide that.
Okay. All right. So what initially motivated you to run for office? Is it because what you saw while you were in college or excuse me, in law school while you were interning at these institutions? Is that what kind of propelled you to eventually say, hey, I really like what I see, what they're doing, and I want to be in that position one day? How did that happen?
I mean, growing up, I've always been interested in politics. Always been interested in politics. My dad and mom, they always, growing up in the Northeast and with our last name, they always re-emphasized our founding fathers and the importance of our government and the importance of being involved in our government and serving people. And so it's something I've always been interested in. I just wasn't sure in what capacity and how to do that. Once I got to law school and had the opportunity to intern on the 14th Court of Appeals and then be a briefing attorney on the Supreme Court of Texas, when you work at those courts in that capacity, everything kind of clicked. It's
Okay.
like, this is what I want to do.
That's when you did see it. Okay.
One
I
day-
figured.
One day I want to come back here, when I feel that I have the requisite amount of experience and
Right.
knowledge, come back and serve. And so now that the kids are all out of college and they're independent and doing their own thing, I've done this for 32 years. I think now my mindset was, now I feel like I can give back based on that experience level. And I can give back the time, experience to serve.
Very nice. So yeah, it all goes back to exposure that you had.
Right.
That's why I like telling people in general, get out there, go try stuff, go do stuff.
Right.
Go do things you would have never imagined you'd be doing last year.
Right, exactly. I mean, when I interned on the 14th Court of Appeals, a number of the judges the interns on the court, you would sit in the library and wait till a justice would come and grab you to
Oh, really?
to do work. So it's kind of like being in the bullpen.
Take the trash out?
No, we didn't have to do that, thankfully. But there were 2 or 3 of us, and they would, judge would come by and grab one of us,
Right.
Or several of us, but usually one of us to go do work, and you try to do your best job, so you keep being the one who gets grabbed
Right.
to go do new projects. And then you form a relationship, you get to have lunches, and then they start sharing their knowledge and experience with you. And when that happens, then you learn that's something that you want to pass on, be a mentor to folks younger and share your experiences.
Okay.
So it's a good learning process.
Right. And having that mentorship is priceless
Oh, right.
from those types of people.
Right. And for any industry or occupation, to find that mentor who's willing to invest time and teach you the things that you can't read in a book about how to do what you have an interest or passion for is priceless. So and
Yeah,
again,
I agree. Yeah, it sounds like you had some great mentors yourself.
I was very fortunate. And when
Right.
at the Supreme Court of Texas, I was fortunate or blessed to work for Raul Gonzalez, first Hispanic elected judge in the state of Texas.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that person, but
He's a legend.
okay, he's a legend. Wow.
He's a legend. It was a blessing to work for him, but he was a mentor and taught me so much during that year about the practice of law and, frankly, about how to be a good appellate judge.
Okay.
And we're still in contact.
Well, very good. Yeah.
Today. So he's been a wonderful mentor.
Well, you have big shoes to fill.
I do. I do.
If you say he's a legend,
He's
so
a
Terry,
legend.
you're working your way there too, right?
He's
to
a
be
legend.
a legend.
Well, it's something you have. It's something you have to earn. It's something you have to earn over time. And so
I agree.
I was
Yeah,
fortunate
right.
to learn from him, and I look forward to earning it.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm excited about that. I'm excited you say that. It's a great thing to be ambitious and
Well,
set the bar high.
Well, you set the bar high. I mean, because you learn from so many people, and you want to emulate and you want to take what they gave you and take it to the next level.
Yes, I agree. I like that word, emulation.
Right.
If you see somebody successful or see something you'd like, yeah, emulate that person or try to do better, like you just said.
Right. Well, if they're going to invest in you as well, then you
Right.
want to honor their decision to invest in you and to mentor you, and you want to make them proud.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
so take it to the next level, and then you get to share that knowledge, the combined knowledge, with other people, and then they can take it even higher.
Yes, absolutely. Even myself personally, I've had some pretty good mentors myself, and I'm still working with some mentors that have shaped me to who I've become right now. I've told you about that, a little bit about that.
Yep.
So, yeah, very grateful and fortunate to have had that as well. Yeah, just like yourself.
But that's the thing about the practice of law, and I think any business as well. But law is nice because they call it practice of law. As soon as you think you've got it or that you know it all, and I think this was good advice that I learned, is as soon as you think you know it all, you're screwed, right? I mean,
Agreed. Yeah.
Every day should be a learning process,
Right.
and you should never, quote unquote, think that you got it. It's a humbling medicine business. Anything is that complicated that every day you should be learning, and you should always feel there's something new to learn every day and to get better.
Yes, yeah. The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know.
That's
I'm sure you've heard that many times.
well, it's exactly true, because the more you learn and the more you get into something, you realize, oh, I'm not anywhere close
Right.
to knowing what I thought I knew.
Right.
And there's so much more to learn. And so,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but it's a great process. I mean, again, learning keeps you young at heart when you realize how much you have to learn, but there's so much good you can do with that knowledge.
I agree. Yeah.
So-
Wisdom is so important and essential.
Right.
And I strive to search for that wisdom. I mean, we can talk about like being a radio studio or a radio host. You can do that your whole life, and there's still things that you have to learn about that one particular field.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what you said is it's totally on point in regards to that. So Terry, you, as your previous position, you were campaigning in 10 counties. Is that correct?
That's
so.
correct.
What's your biggest takeaway from pretty much being around 10 counties, your experiences doing that, and things that you learned? Because a lot of people don't get that chance.
It's fascinating. I mean, at first, when you do it for the first time, when you go to your first event, it's a little intimidating,
Nerve-wracking?
a little nerve-wracking, because most people, even lawyers, are not 100% comfortable with public speaking, and especially appellate lawyers. I mean, we can go to court and argue a case in a court of appeals or Supreme Court. We prepare for it for a week or two. We can get geared up and go do it.
Right.
Typically, I'm pretty much an introvert.
Oh, really?
And so, the idea of going into a room full of people that I may be meeting for the first time,
Right.
and then talking about myself,
Right.
was not something that's intuitive. You become more able to do it with practice, but it's something different. And so every day you're talking to groups of people contemporaneously, invariably educating them about what the court system is, but also talking about yourself.
Right.
What I learned from the process is that folks, no matter what community they're from, whatever economic strata they're in, there's so much more in common that we all have than what divides us. And the commonality among different communities, among different ethnic groups, among different financial backgrounds, everyone wants the same thing, and everyone believes in the same thing, which is the American dream. And they care about their family, their faith, and they want the government in general to get out of their paycheck and get out of their life.
Right.
And they're just trying to make ends meet and do their best job to raise their family. And that commonality cuts across everything. That was my biggest lesson.
Okay. Yeah, I really like that. Terry, what is your current thoughts about Houston and Harris County politics? So yeah, local.
You know, I would just I guess I'll preface that by saying what my viewpoint is, and not everyone may agree with it. But my viewpoint on our form of government and where we should be both nationally and on a local level is I point people to the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. And it says that we have God-given rights that are inalienable, of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and safety. And that those rights are given to us by God, not given to us by government, can't be taken away by government, and that the role of government is limited to ensuring or protecting those God-given rights. And when government, in my view, steps beyond protecting those God-given rights, it's stepped outside of its role. So going back to Harris County, I think it's, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion only, not anything that would be reduced to a judicial opinion, is that it's gone too far. It transcends what I believe the founders contemplated when they started this country.
Okay. And so that goes the same for Texas and the U.S.? Because I was going to ask you that as my next question, but you already pretty much answered it.
The U.S. is gone. I mean, the U.S. is the same. Texas is doing its best to go back and emulate, and historically has done that, is stay true to the founders, the principles of our founding fathers. That the government should be limited. It shouldn't be all expansive. It's not the big brother. And I think Texas has done a good job, a better job than maybe local and national.
Okay, yeah. I like how you mentioned the founding fathers, because I'm a big fan myself of our founding fathers and the documents they created, which is why we're here right now. And I've studied a lot of them pretty deeply.
Well, they're genius documents. I mean, to me, the key document, and again, people could disagree, is the Declaration of Independence. I mean, because the Constitution is based on those principles, and they're basically incorporated into the Constitution. But that document was the first of its kind in the history of the world. I mean, at that point in time, in early 1700s, every form of government was centralized government, kings and queens, monarchies. And the rights that people had were given to them by the monarchy, and the monarchy, the king or queen, could take them away. And they could
in an instant.
And if you didn't do what they said, they could kill you, including not go to the right church. So rights were given and taken away by kings. And so our founding fathers decided that wasn't a good idea, that there was more involved in life than that, and that government should be by the people, for the people, and that the emphasis of power should be the people, not the government. And so the Declaration of Independence, against that backdrop, to me, is the most courageous, awe-inspiring document in the history of the world. And that's the foundation for our country. And it goes back to your question about my views on local and national. We've strayed from that. And when we do stray from that, then we go to a place that our founding fathers were trying to avoid. Right.
Yeah, those are some very intelligent men, or very intelligent people. And if I could go back in time to meet anybody, I would probably want to sit down at a meeting with them and just pick their brains.
Oh yeah, I mean, they were so courageous. I mean, because each of them gave up their life for that
to do that,
because they were hunted down by the British. Many lost their lives and or their livelihood because they were signatories on that document. And so it wasn't some idle thing. I mean, they put their whole heart and soul into where we are now as a country, in terms of this landmark principle of we're going to have a country based on God-given rights, and where the power is invested in the people. I mean, that was extraordinary, and it still is extraordinary. And
it is when I think about it.
It's a timeless thing, and here we are,
because of them.
Since 1774, here we are, right? And so where do we take it next? And how do we make sure government doesn't transcend where it's supposed to go?
So, we need to preserve that, right, Terry?
And so that's my personal view.
Preservation that's key.
That's my personal view.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. What are your thoughts about the lockdowns that we've had, over the last few years, and then kind of what's going on right now as they may re-implement those restrictions that they had in regards to personal and then business, shutting down businesses?
Yeah. I mean, for me, again, my personal view is it goes beyond the role of government, right? I mean, government, this country was set up in the Declaration of Independence to have a country of personal responsibility. And again, if the government is doing things beyond protecting our God-given rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness,
Right.
and safety is not health, in my view,
Right.
then it's going too far. And so ordering people, and I understand the rationale on the other side, but that's not this form of government. And
Okay.
that's not what we stand for. And so there needs to be individual responsibility.
Right.
Governments should not tell businesses when to open and close, when they can hire, when people should be laid off. It's not, in my view, the role of government.
Okay, so you think it's out of the scope of what
it's-
they should be
I
doing?
think it's gone too far.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then obviously you probably feel the same about the masks as well.
Again, in my view,
Right.
I think it should be personal responsibility.
Okay.
And I understand the other side of the argument, but I think everyone has a right to wear a mask.
Right.
Everyone has a right to social distance, just like people have a right not to wear a mask.
Right.
And so people need to exercise their rights responsibly and in
Right.
consideration of other people, right?
Okay.
If someone wants to wear a mask and social distance and the whole 9 yards, people who don't want to wear a mask need to be considerate and vice versa and respect that exercise of liberty.
Okay, so what you're saying is nobody should be forced to do that, though.
No one
Is
should
that
be,
correct?
No one should be forced to
Okay.
do that,
Okay,
in my view.
right.
Because then where does that stop, right? I mean, and even with 4 shots, I mean, again, I understand the rationale on the other side, but if the government can tell people what they need to put in their body or on their body, then where does that stop?
What's next, right?
Yeah, right. And I'm always, as lawyers, we're always
Right.
concerned about, well, what's the precedent? If we take this step, then what's the next step after that?
Right.
And that's what concerns me about these issues. If we say it's okay for the government to do these things, then what's the next step? What's going to prevent us from the government telling us, how we can run details of our life? And
Right.
is that what we really want? The government can tell you what has to go into your body or what you have to wear. I'm not sure. I mean, then I think we've just totally transcended our form of government from
Right.
a government by the people, for the people, to a centralized government that our founding fathers sought to escape.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's
In my personal view, again.
no, absolutely. I mean, I like freedom. Just simply said.
Well, I think, and we watch the people at the border, and we watch what's happening in Cuba, and we see, and we've seen it over and over again, people leaving centralized forms of government to come here to experience the American dream.
Right.
The fact that everyone wants to come here to experience the American dream is a testament to the fact that it works.
Right.
It's the envy of the world. So how do we protect it? And make sure that the American dream, which is based on individual work,
Individual responsibility.
an individual responsibility
Right.
is preserved.
Right. Right. Okay.
So
All right, Terry. What are some of your hobbies? What do you like to do for fun, or is it just work, 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 work?
it's been a lot of work.
Do you have time for hobbies?
It's been a lot of work. I mean, my hobby, my wife would be crazy, but it's my family, honestly.
Okay.
I mean, the
Right.
most important thing is
Right.
family. And so I've
Right.
spent a lot of
Family
time
man.
in the last several years with my parents. Their health was declining,
Right.
and my dad just recently passed away. But so I've been a caregiver
Oh, okay.
for both of them.
That's a lot too.
A lot.
A lot of work. Yeah.
But it's, that's what family's for.
Right.
And to try to teach the kids by example that the most important thing is family. So my hobby, such as it is, I think it's important, is family, and to make sure that everyone is doing what they need to be doing,
Right.
and I can be there for them. And hobbies that don't involve family, I like to exercise. And so
Oh, very good. Me too.
so exercise, which happens to be a healthy exercise, it keeps me going, and so I can do all the things I want to do. So I try to exercise every day.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, I didn't know that. Do you like to jog or walk or cycle?
I walk Memorial Park every day. I like
Oh,
the bicycle.
very nice.
And
Yeah.
I also like to lift weights.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like to do those two things too.
So kind of a nice diversity,
Change it up,
cardiovascular, and then lifting weights is a nice way to. It's a nice way to relieve stress.
Right. And then you can keep the guns.
Well, I don't know if that's the case for me or not, but it's when you're laying on a bench and you got a bunch of weight, over your chest that it motivates you in a substantial way.
All right, Terry, we're going to wrap up with the last question. I always do this one, the best question of the day.
Okay.
3 tips to be successful in life. It's for all of our listeners and viewers. Your 3 best tips.
3 tips to be successful in life. I mean, the first thing I would say is never give up. Always persevere. Never give up on anything. Persevere always. Faith. I don't think you can do anything in life without faith. Life's hard. And without faith and trusting in God, it's just not going to work. You have to let go and trust. And again, family. Stay close to your family. If you have faith in family and then perseverance, that's, for me, those are the 3 keys to success. And I think for most people, faith, family, and perseverance will take you a long, long way.
All right. To everybody out there listening and to all of our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in today. Terry Adams, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Right. Tune in next week, Monday, 12 to 1 p.m., Jimmy Kim Show. See you then. Have a good day.